Goes well beyond Roundup and Monsanto. Glyphosate. It's really not that familiar to a lot of us. It's still hard for me to say at times here, but it's really important and we need to get to know it because it's used around the world in many products. Most of us have likely been exposed. It sounds scary, but it's true. Should we be worried or is it safe? I found out how far this goes from Carey Gillam. She's a veteran journalist who's been covering Monsanto for decades. She was first assigned to this. It was a story she was doing for Reuters more than 20 years ago. She's now written a book on this very topic. Carey, when you talk about Monsanto, that name is pretty well known, but when you talk about something like Roundup, it is so well known. It's in so many of our sheds and garages and in businesses. This latest verdict on behalf of a gentleman who was using it, he said, on his land for, 20 years and developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Do you think this newest verdict will stand?
Yeah, I do. I do think it will stand. The federal judge in charge of this trial took great pains to make it as hard as possible for the plaintiff to win a verdict. He separated out the evidence. He was extremely diligent in limiting the first phase of the evidence to only scientific studies. He only allowed plaintiffs to present evidence about corporate conduct that was during the period of the plaintiff's use. He didn't allow them to present any evidence about Monsanto's secret ghostwriting of scientific studies and things like that took place after Mr. Hardiman, the plaintiff, stopped using Roundup. And he really limited the amount of expert witnesses that plaintiffs could bring in. He kept a pretty tight rein on this, and observers and analysts believe he did that to make it bulletproof from an appellate process.
Are they really changing anything in terms of chemicals or business practices, or are they trying to just work this through the system, write it off, write a check for, $400 million and go about their business?
Well, the checks that they're probably going to write is going to be in the billions of dollars. If you listen to analysts and observers, they're thinking it might be $5 billion to achieve a global settlement here.
Would that devastate them?
No.
Okay.
Monsanto was purchased by Bayer last summer, the big German conglomerate, for $63 billion. So there's a lot of money. It's not going to hurt the company. It does certainly scare investors. Investors have been driving share prices down. The other thing that this litigation does is it scares consumers, and regulators are starting to take another look at this, and school districts and cities and towns are starting to take another look.
This almost reminds me of the Aaron Brockovich case, except for that was concentrated in one community with certain water and soil there, whereas Roundup, and I'm not saying there's any sort of culpability or danger out there because I'm going to leave that to the court system, but this is a national thing because we all have access to Roundup.
Well, it's an international thing, actually, right? I mean, this glyphosate-based herbicides of Roundup are sold around the world. Europe is very concerned about this. In particular, several countries have already moved to ban Roundup products, glyphosate products. France is looking to ban, Italy, Germany, many other countries. It is a concern because it's so widely used. The way that it affects our health, there are reproductive concerns in addition to the cancer concerns. Scientific studies have found, impacts on kidney function as well. And it's in our food and in our water. So, what I write about in my book and what I see is that Monsanto and this herbicide Roundup is a poster child for a really much bigger problem of pesticide dependence that these handful of companies like Monsanto and others have told us, don't worry about this stuff. Just keep using it, and we'll make billions of dollars. But the science is showing us that, human health and environmental health is really at risk here.
It's times like this that you realize the importance of journalists working on stories like this for 20 years, that when all this comes to a crescendo, they can really put it in a context for what we're facing. An update tonight on Jussie Smollett. It wouldn't be a day without another update about him, another turn. It's far from over, another twist. We told you earlier this week charges had been dropped against the actor at the state level. But President Trump tweeted this morning, quote, FBI and DOJ to review the outrageous Jussie Smollett case in Chicago. It is an embarrassment to our nation. Let's rewind. Back in January, Smollett claimed he was beaten in a racial and homophobic attack. He claimed it happened in Chicago. Officials in the city then said they had evidence it was a hoax orchestrated by him, including a confession from the alleged attackers. The Empire actor was